My friends, I have gotten so many questions lately on cruelty-free, what it means to be cruelty-free. Am I cruelty-free if I do this, but I don't do this? And all these questions and misconceptions about cruelty-free and the difference between vegan and cruelty-free. There's so many questions. I am not an expert on cruelty-free, so I brought someone in that is an expert on cruelty-free. This is Courtney, also known as Phyrra Nyx on YouTube. She also has a cruelty-free blog. I'm going to be interviewing her today for you to answer a million questions about cruelty-free. I don't think you're going to have any cruelty-free questions after this is over, so if that sounds great to you, hang tight. We're getting into it right now. Hi, Courtney. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Jen?
I am great, and I am excited to talk to you about this because I do feel like, at least in the comment sections of my videos, there's so many questions about cruelty-free and people getting upset about things because of confusion. And I feel like there's no better person to answer these questions than you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so honored. I'm really happy to be here to talk about cruelty-free with you.
Well, we really appreciate it as a community that you're taking time out of your day to talk with us. So if you don't know Courtney, she does have a YouTube channel called Phyrra Nyx, and I will be linking that down below for you so you can go ahead and check it out. She also has a blog that I will also link down below, and just puts out really good quality makeup reviews and videos on cruelty-free makeup. And I think you'll really love her, along with her expertise. Her review skills are fantastic. So definitely check her out if you're not already subscribed. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is just kind of like a getting to know you question of how did you pick the name Phyrra Nyx for your channel?
Well, actually, Phyrra is the name of my role-playing character. Like, I used to play this drow elf character in D&D, and she just kind of stuck with me. Like, whenever I would play online MMO, which are massively multiplayer online games, I would use the name Phyrra, or I would use Phyrra Nyx if, like, Phyrra was taken. So she just kind of stuck with me for a long time.
Nice, that is so cool. I actually used to play Dungeons and Dragons as a teenager. I was in the Dungeons and Dragons club in middle school, so fun fact. So tell me a little bit about the kind of content that you put on your blog.
Oh, so with my blog, I pretty much talk about cruelty-free beauty. I talk about hooded eye makeup and like tips and tricks for that because I have hooded eyes. You can't tell today because I put my Contours RX lid correcting strips in my eyes, which basically kind of like hides the hood. And then I also talk about pale girl, like foundation and makeup, like tips and tricks, just because it can be sometimes difficult to find foundations that match my skin tone. I gotta give a shout out to Eden Minerals, who make my favorite foundation, Nordic Veil, in the shade Yoran. But pretty much I talk about cruelty-free beauty. Sometimes I talk about lifestyle stuff with my dogs. I've got some awesome dogs. They're standard poodles. I have Phaedra and Nyx. Nyx is named for the goddess of the night, so they're pretty cute.
Nice. I'm sure that a lot of people would really enjoy that content, definitely. So thank you for sharing that. So let's go ahead and get into the cruelty-free topic, and I think the most important way to start this off is just to define cruelty-free and what it means. So can you do that for us?
Sure. So if something is cruelty-free, what it means is that it was not tested on animals at any part of the process. So like the raw ingredients weren't tested on animals, the product itself wasn't tested on animals, like nowhere in the process is it tested. There wasn't any third-party testing. That's what cruelty-free means. And the reason that it gets kind of complicated in the US is because in the US there is no legal definition of cruelty-free. So because of that, there can be a lot of confusion.
Gotcha. So what, I know some people get confused between, like for example, carmine as an ingredient. People have had in my comments get very upset when a brand says that they're cruelty-free, but yet they include an ingredient like carmine, which is made from those boiled crushed bugs. So can you explain why a product that would include something like carmine could be cruelty-free?
So that's actually a really good question. I guess because people have used carmine, which is, like you said, it's crushed bugs, it's really gross, as an ingredient for hundreds of years, people don't consider that to be an issue, and that gets into, in my opinion, the difference between cruelty-free and vegan. So if a product is vegan, that means there are no animal ingredients at all. That means there's no carmine, there's no silk, there's no honey, no lanolin, nothing that comes from an animal. Doesn't matter if it's an animal byproduct, if it's there, it's not vegan. That's where I see a lot of confusion, is people are like, well, it's, you know, it has animal products, so it can't be cruelty-free. And it's like, well, it's not exactly the case. So if a product is vegan and it has nothing made from animals, it's not tested on animals, it's actually truly vegan. But there can be some confusion with labeling because some companies will say that a product is 100% vegan, but they still test on animals. So that's why it gets really complicated, at least here in the US.
Wow. So an animal, a bug, can actually die for the product and it will still be called cruelty-free.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's really confusing to some people. I think that really blows people's mind.
It does. And did you know, like, just to be clear, I'm not vegan, but I don't know if you know this, but carmine is also like one of the things that's used, I think, to color maraschino cherries and stuff like that. Like, it's used as like a food ingredient too, so.
Yeah, absolutely. What did I hear that it's in? Some kind of candy. I heard that they use carmine in a candy. I can't remember which one though. So one thing I mention in my videos quite often is the different levels of cruelty-freeness. Can there be different levels of cruelty-free, can you be cruelty-free and, believe one thing and someone else be cruelty-free and believe something else?
Absolutely. In my opinion, everybody is at a different stage in their cruelty-free journey. That's one reason that I don't judge, I don't shame. But there are some people who feel that cruelty-free means to them that it's all companies that say they're cruelty-free. Some people feel that it's cruelty-free only if their parent company doesn't test on animals. So, for example, they would not consider Urban Decay to be cruelty-free because they are owned by L'Oreal. L'Oreal is not a cruelty-free company currently. There are people who only consider things to be cruelty-free if they're 100% vegan. As we discussed, that means no animal products at all. So there's like all of these different levels of cruelty-free.
Okay. So what are some popular cruelty-free brands that are mainstream brands that people might want to check out?
Okay, so my favorite popular mainstream cruelty-free brands would be like Urban Decay, Too Faced, It Cosmetics, Becca Cosmetics, Hourglass, Wet n Wild, Physicians Formula, Nyx. Nyx is another one. There's also like Bare Minerals, Bite Beauty, Cover FX. There's actually a lot of cruelty-free brands that you can find at Sephora and Ulta.
Is there a good resource that people can use to find all of these cruelty-free brands?
Absolutely. I keep a cruelty-free list on my blog. I have the date that I update that page listed on the blog so you can see whenever I last updated it. I also highly recommend checking out my friend Jen from My Beauty Bunny and my friend Tashina from Logical Harmony. The three of us email a couple times a week to discuss new brands, to share information, to say, this is what the brand told me, what did they tell you? We try to make our cruelty-free lists match as closely as possible. They don't match 100%, but we try our best to get them to be very close, just so that there's less confusion out there for our readers.
That is awesome that you collaborate with them on that and kind of have a united front to make sure that you're presenting the best information possible. That's amazing.
I also highly recommend Leaping Bunny, but not every brand is going to be Leaping Bunny certified because it's a special certification process and they do charge a one-time fee. Some brands are okay with that, some brands aren't. A lot of brands use PETA, but I personally don't trust PETA because sometimes PETA will have brands on the list that are testing on animals and I'm just like, eh.
Okay, oh wait. Okay, we got to talk about this now. All right. This was a question later, but now we got to talk about this. So you're telling me that if there is a PETA bunny on the package, it may not be cruelty-free.
So people can put anything they want on packaging in the USA. Because there's no legal definition of cruelty-free. So some brands, for example, Batiste has a vegan thing on it and it has a bunny and it says not tested in animals or whatever, but they still test on animals right now. So
what?
Yeah, like that really upset me because I used to buy Batiste as my dry shampoo. I thought they were awesome, and then when I found that out, like I emailed them, I called them on the phone, and they said all of this stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm no longer going to buy your brand.
Wow.
Another really confusing example for this is L'Oreal's Ever Pure line or Ever Fresh line, whatever that whole line, the Ever line. It says 100% vegan on the packaging, but that line, like while it may not have any animal ingredients, it's still owned by L'Oreal and they still do test on animals currently in China. So actually, let me rephrase. They don't test themselves, but the government tests their products, if that makes sense. There's like a really confusing distinction there. So yeah. I know it's really, really hard for people to understand that just because they see the bunny, it may not be cruelty-free, but that really is the truth. That's one of the things I talk about in my video on my 5 tips on how to go cruelty-free is that you have to learn to think critically. You have to, take it into your own hands to reach out to a brand and ask questions, or you have to refer to sources that you can trust.
And we already talked about a few of those sources, so that's great that they'll have that, everyone has that as a resource now to check the cruelty-free status, because chances are you or one of the other blogs have reached out to the brand before and found out this information.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, because I ran into that same problem with the crayon case,
I saw
where
that.
they're an indie brand, and they had the PETA bunny on their eyeshadow palette, but they weren't listed on PETA's website anywhere. And I tried to reach out to them and ask them about their cruelty-free status, and they never responded, along with a few other questions that I had. One of my subscribers tried to reach out to them on Instagram, and they basically, it sounded that they were kind of writing me off as someone who was just being negative and kind of being a hater, instead of someone who genuinely wanted to know the answers to questions. I had a bunch of concerns. They're all listed in the video description of that video, but that was one of them, was that they had the PETA bunny on there. But now I know even if they were listed on PETA's website, that still doesn't mean they're cruelty free. So how do they get away with that? Like, if they're not cruelty free but still PETA gives them the bunny, how does that work?
So the way that works is that PETA is a really large organization, and I think they have too many people doing things, so they don't verify the information. They don't check. They basically just ask a brand, are you cruelty free? And if the brand says yes, they're like, great, we're going to give you our certification. They don't bother to check to see, well, do you test your ingredients on animals? Does anybody test for you? Is there third-party testing going on? Do you sell in China where there's mandatory testing in certain places? They don't do any of this like background check stuff.
Wow.
So, that's why I personally don't trust PETA's list. When I first got into cruelty free, I was like, oh, PETA's awesome, yeah. And then when I started learning more about them, I'm like, oh, they're really not that good. So if somebody wants to start with PETA, I'm not going to dissuade them, because it is a starting place. It's a starting point. But I really kind of try to push them towards Leaping Bunny, because I feel like Leaping Bunny is a better place. And then if they're really receptive, I tell them to check out my blog or Tashina's or Jen's and go from there, because I feel like, the three of us put a lot of work into our lists.
Right. So you feel like the Leaping Bunny, if you saw that would
Yes.
be a good solid indication that it truly is cruelty free.
Absolutely. There's also a bunny for Australia. I can't remember what they call it, but that bunny is a pretty good bunny too, because their cruelty-free brand is much more reliable than PETA.
Okay. That's good to know. That surprises me. So I'm really glad that you're clarifying that, because that surprises me. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I didn't know until I went cruelty-free too. I went cruelty-free in 2012, and then I was like, oh, there's so much stuff out here. It's really confusing. And then I met Jen, and Jen helped me, and she explained everything to me. And so that kind of pushed me along. And then I met Tashina, and then the three of us just started talking all the time. So it was kind of cool.
And Jen owns which website?
Jen owns mybeautybunny.com.
Okay, got
and
it.
Tashina owns logicalharmony.net.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. So I've noticed a lot, and maybe you've noticed this too, you're of course know more about this than I do, that a lot of indie brands are cruelty-free. It seems to be more indie brands than mainstream brands that are cruelty-free. Why do you think that is? And then also, what are some of your favorite indie cruelty-free brands?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that comes down to the fact that because indie brands are small brands, they're able to control every step of their process. They're able to control who they buy their ingredients from, so they can make sure they're buying from cruelty-free ingredient suppliers. And, they're not going to pay the big companies to do testing or anything like that. It's just not in their budget. It's not something they think about. And most of them are animal lovers, or at least the ones that I know personally. So it's just not something they would ever do. So when I look at indie brands that I love that are cruelty-free, I think about things like, or I think about brands like Sugar Pill, Phyrra Nyx, Darling Girl, Silk Naturals, Emma Diane, KB Shimmer, they make my favorite nail polish, Pretty Serious, and I'm sure I'm going to forget some, but those are some of the ones that I use a lot in my blog.
Nice. And it's funny because a lot of those are brands that I've never personally tried. I've tried a lot of indie brands, but I haven't tried most of those. So now I've got making my mental list right now of brands that I want to try now. So thank you for that. And I think that, in a land where YouTube is so saturated with products as PR, the indie brands aren't really, they don't have the budget to send out so much PR. So
No.
a channel like yours is going to give viewers a different experience because you're reviewing these products that aren't necessarily reviewed other other places, which I think is awesome. So it's kind of a happy byproduct of what you do.
Yeah, every time I talk about Aroma Lee, or My Pretty Zombie, they're two of my favorite, I forgot to mention them, but they're two of my favorite indie brands, and they do a lot of like duochrome colors. People love those because they're such unusual colors. You can't just walk into Sephora and find colors like that.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of times indie brands are more creative overall as far as the product offerings and what they're, the things they're putting together, and the concepts and the ideas just seem so fresh and different, where I feel like a lot of mainstream brands stay in that comfort mass market zone.
Yeah, the warm smoky tones all the time.
Mm-hmm. And the browns and the neutrals, and now all the warm browns are everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yes, definitely. So another question I get asked all the time is, if my product is made in China, if it says PRC, People's Republic of China, or if it says made in China, that it is automatically tested on animals. Can you kind of explain how China works as far as animal testing, and how to kind of decide whether something is cruelty-free or not if it was made in China?
Yes. Okay, so the China issue is extremely complex. A product can be made in China and say like PRC and sold in the US and still be cruelty-free. An example of that would be the brand Tarte. I know that they're, a controversial brand right now, but they often will make palettes and such in China and then sell them here, but they are still cruelty-free. You can make products in China and sell them in a province like Hong Kong, and they can be cruelty-free because Hong Kong is exempt from animal testing. There are other provinces in China now that are exempt from animal testing as well. Some other ways to get around US companies testing on animals in China is to do what Nude Sticks did. If you're familiar with the brand Nude Sticks, they are sold at Sephora and Ulta. And I had a FaceTime actually with Jenny Frankel, the founder of the company, and she explained how she was able to create a company in a specific province of China that had all of the approved ingredients for their products to then create like a Nude Sticks China company so she could sell and still be cruelty-free in China. And it was a very complicated, expensive process, but that's how she's doing it. I have heard that other brands get around the issue by using cadavers for testing instead of animals. Yeah, that's human cadavers. I mean, so like there's ways that different companies avoid animal testing in China. And I've also heard that some brands will just bribe the Chinese government, because I think it's very clear, or I think it's a very important distinction, that this is all the Chinese government having regulations in place to protect their people. They're not doing this to be cruel to animals. And I feel like a lot of times when the China issue comes up, people kind of come off as racist, or maybe that's not it, but they definitely don't seem to understand that it's not your average person in China who wants this. The average person in China just wants to be safe. They want to be able to buy a product and not have a problem. And they did have problems, a lot of problems several years ago. So that's kind of where this, what's going on. And like, if you want more detailed information on this subject, because it has been changing, especially in the past 6 months, I strongly recommend going to Tashina's blog, Logical Harmony, and she has a couple posts that are really detailed on this issue. But in short, you can have something made in China and sell it in the US, and it can be cruelty-free, and that's where you're at.
So to add on to that, so I'm good with that as far as if something says PRC, it can be cruelty-free. But if a US-based company sells in China, that's typically considered not cruelty-free. Is that correct?
That is
or
correct.
Is that changing?
That is correct, unless like they're doing something special like Nude Sticks, or they're just only selling in Hong Kong. Because what happens right now is that Chinese-based beauty brands are like exempt from most testing, but American ones are not. But the testing that goes on is post-market testing, which is where they'll just go pull products from a shelf. So it's kind of like spotty. That's why some companies like Mac was no longer cruelty-free in 2012. That was actually the catalyst to me going cruelty-free on my blog, was Mac starting to sell in China. So Mac always says they're trying to make change from within, but I haven't seen them do anything about that. But their products will be tested, just randomly from the shelves. So it's not like the brand themselves are doing the testing. So that's why they try to say they're cruelty-free. And that's actually what happens a lot. Like a lot of, like, if you go to the makeup show or other beauty industry events and you talk to people, they won't have any idea on whether or not their brand is cruelty-free, because they're taught, well, it is because of these issues. They don't test in the US, so that's all that matters. And so it gets really confusing for people. So I don't know if I answered that okay or not.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then I did notice, I did want to touch on L'Oreal a bit, because I did notice that L'Oreal does have that cruelty-free statement on their website. I'll read it to you because I do have a note here. It says, L'Oreal does not test any of its products or any of its ingredients on animals and has been at the forefront of alternative methods for over 30 years. Yet I know that L'Oreal is one of those brands that is notoriously known for not being cruelty-free, yet they have that statement there. So that kind of ties into what you were just saying. Is there, and like, so L'Oreal is not cruelty-free because they test and they send their products to China, and then people in China randomly pick products off the market, and then they test those on animals. That's what's happening here, yes?
Yeah, and L'Oreal is actually really interesting in a special case. And I have some facts I want to share with you. I have my notes, so I want to grab my notes, because I started researching, like, how can L'Oreal say this, and realized that some of what they said is true. While they are still, testing on animals in China because it's a government thing, they don't test in the US. And they actually started developing alternatives to animal testing in 1978, 1979. They started buying up companies that had anything to do with like EpiSkin and like bioprinting to create like a safer means of testing for humans.
What is that? What's EpiSkin? What is that?
So I guess like in 97, EpiSkin was developed by this company called bioMérieux. It's a French name, so I'm probably butchering it. And L'Oreal bought that company to start working on developing EpiSkin kits for testing products. And so since 1997, they've continued to buy up all different kinds of companies that had anything to do with this particular area of alternative means of testing, so that they could try to push to the forefront in this field.
Okay, so it's like fake skin, basically.
Yeah, it is fake skin. That's exactly what it is. So, when a lot of companies like pay lip service like Mac and say that they're doing things to try to, get rid of testing from within, I've never seen anything from Mac on this subject. But from L'Oreal, I have actually seen proof, because there are all kinds of articles. I can send you links to the articles that you can look at where they talk about this EpiSkin and how they're developing it and how it's used and how it's actually more effective and more accurate for testing products than testing on animals. That's the thing that I think really stands out.
That is so interesting. So L'Oreal is a big player in that. So people that are cruelty-free, that probably wouldn't change their mind about L'Oreal, I would imagine. But hopefully the advancements that L'Oreal is trying to make will help the world go cruelty-free.
So yeah, I have a lot of respect for L'Oreal and what they're doing with EpiSkin, and I do think it's going to change the world.
I hope so. I definitely hope so. That's awesome. So I know that I have some viewers that are really interested in going cruelty-free, but they're hesitant for one reason or another. How does somebody start beginning to go cruelty-free? Like, do they have to throw away all of their makeup that's not cruelty-free in order to be a cruelty-free consumer?
Absolutely not. I believe in baby steps. Do it all gradually. So don't throw away things that you've already spent money on and bought. That's just wasteful. You're just going to be putting stuff in a landfill. I think it's better to basically, whenever you use up a product, start researching what the cruelty-free alternative is to that product. And really what I did is I made a list of all of my brands that were cruelty-free and all of my brands that were not cruelty-free, so that I could try to find replacements for those brands.
Nice. So if somebody is, let's say they want to go cruelty-free, but then they're not vegetarian, they're not vegan, but they want to go cruelty-free, can someone be not vegetarian and not vegan and still want to go cruelty-free, or is that kind of an oxymoron contradiction?
I think it's absolutely fine. I am not vegetarian or vegan. I dated a vegan for 5 years, but I think every little bit helps. I basically have, I guess, what you would call a harm reductionist mindset. So try to do the least amount of harm possible. So if you can be vegetarian or vegan, that's great, but not everybody can. There's a lot of health reasons why some people cannot be vegetarian or vegan. So, you should do whatever is best for you, but if you can try to be cruelty-free, that's great. If you can only be 50% cruelty-free, that will make a difference. Every little bit helps. It's kind of like with stuff with the environment and recycling and stuff, stuff like that. Every little bit does add up.
So, and actually I've heard recently, I think it was an article that I read that they were talking about that drugstore makeup has been really losing a lot of money recently, that the sales for drugstore makeup has gone down significantly, especially from mainstream brands like CoverGirl, Maybelline, L'Oreal, brands like that. And I think I must have mentioned it in my makeup news show, What's Up in Makeup or something, because I remember seeing comments like, well, if they would just go cruelty free, they would get so much more money. They wouldn't have to worry about people not buying it anymore. So it's definitely possible that the cruelty-free movement really is making an impact.
I do think that's the case. I also think that some of the other drugstore brands have really stepped up their game, like Physicians Formula, Wet n Wild, and NYX. Like those three brands, to me, from the drugstore, they kill it. They've done a lot of great products, and I think that that's part of why perhaps those other brands aren't doing quite as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think so too. And do you know if Makeup Revolution is cruelty-free?
Yes, they are.
And so that's another one that I see that's doing really well as far as people recommending their products, saying that the products are very, very good in comparison with other drugstore brands. So it might just be a quality increase as well in those cruelty-free brands, just doing the makeup right and doing it well, so people are more likely to purchase it.
It could also be that more people are buying indie brands too, because indie brands are more in line with drugstore pricing, but then you're getting department store quality for the price.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point as well. I totally agree with that. Absolutely. The one thing you would mention to me as a question you get a lot is about medication and medication not being cruelty-free. So I did want to touch on it since this is, a cruelty-free kind of catch-all for a lot of questions. So tell me about medication and cruelty-free, not cruelty-free.
So, in my opinion, you should always listen to your doctor and you should take your medication, because medication to live is a necessity. Makeup is a luxury. That's why for me, I choose to buy cruelty-free makeup because it's a luxury product. I don't consider medicine to be a luxury. I consider, like the medication I take for my anxiety, I take it daily. I consider that a necessity. I consider, my friends who take insulin for diabetes, that's a necessity. Like it's stuff that you absolutely need. So you should always take your medication, and you should not, in my opinion, worry about that. But if that is a concern for you, there's a company that I donate, or a nonprofit or whatever, that I donate money to, called the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And they look into alternative means of testing as far as medicine goes. But that's only if that's a concern for you. Like I said, I don't think that basically being cruelty-free with your makeup has anything to do with being, with trying to be cruelty-free with your medication. I don't think you should try to be cruelty-free with your medication. I think you should take whatever your doctor says you need to take.
Right, unless your doctor can give you an alternative of
Sure.
a cruelty-free, maybe a generic version or another version, and it's something you can financially afford, because we know medications can be outrageously priced. But I totally agree with you that your health is the number one thing in living. I mean, when you're talking about insulin and things like that, I mean, this is your entire life. And yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you on that one. So one more thing, and this is one that I've actually wondered myself, because being an ingredient junkie and someone that looks into ingredients and things, like for example, like talc, mica, ethahexyl palmitate, which is a preservative used in cosmetics. All of these very, very common ingredients probably at one point were tested on animals at some point. Even in Leaping Bunny certified cruelty-free makeup, at some point in their history were probably tested on animals. So is anything ever really truly cruelty-free in that way? Like how do we, why does it even, is there a why does it matter now kind of thing that goes along with that? I mean, I personally still do believe that it matters, but I want to hear your take on that for the person that maybe doesn't think that it matters, because at one point all ingredients were probably tested on animals at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. At one point, every single ingredient, including water, were tested on animals. But in my opinion, just because they were all tested on animals at one point in time doesn't mean that we need to be testing on animals today. I do think it makes a difference. Like I mentioned, there are alternative means to animal testing, like the EpiSkin, that are actually way more accurate at testing whether or not a human is going to have a reaction or not. One of the studies I was reading, and I'm trying to remember what they said the statistics were, that like the animal testing would be like 70% accurate of whether or not there would be a reaction versus like 90% with the epi skin. So that's why I personally think that going more towards using human skin for like the epi skin for testing as opposed to animal testing is way better, because that's kind of like a separate issue that's tied in with this. I would also like to point out that all of those ingredients that have been tested, like there's a long list of improved ingredients that have been proven to be safe for humans now for like 50 or 60 years that most companies will choose to use for their products. And I don't know, it matters to me. I guess that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. And I think also, like, to kind of add on to that is that the animals that are being tested on right now, they care.
Absolutely.
You know, they definitely care about whether, you know, things are being tested on them right now, whether the ingredient was tested a long time ago or not. But I have to admit, I have had that thought in my head, like, is anything ever really cruelty-free? Not that cruelty-free doesn't have a point because of it, but, you know, because these things have been tested for so many years, is anything really truly cruelty-free in that way? And all that would be cruelty-free, I guess, would be a new ingredient that was just invented, but how many of those are there at this point? I don't know.
Well, I know another thing that comes up is that people are always like, well, you know, if I can't be 100% cruelty-free, why should I bother? The thing I tell them is that it's not possible to live in a 100% cruelty-free world right now unless you like give up your phone, your laptop, and just go live in the woods and take care of yourself. Like, that's pretty much it. Like, with our modern society, you know, the iPad, your computer, your phone, your camera, like, there's always going to be exploitation somewhere down the line. So that's why I believe that, you know, trying to do the minimal, like the harm reduction mindset of trying to do the minimal amount of damage that you can is a really good mindset to be in.
I love that. I love that. And especially comparing it to like recycling or something, you know, that, you know, I may recycle at my own home because I have a recycling program. But if I'm at a restaurant and, you know, maybe like a fast food restaurant and I've got my trash and there's no recycling there, do I take the stuff in the bag, bring it home to recycle it, or do I just throw it in the trash at the restaurant? You know, I mean, I think any bit of help if you're recycling at home or recycling wherever you can, it definitely does help. So I think about cruelty-free in that that harm mindset of doing as little harm as possible, I think is a really interesting perspective, and I really think that that's a good perspective to have, and you have to decide for yourself what you can do for your own personal life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, Courtney. I really, really appreciate it. I know I learned a lot from our conversation. I hope the audience learned a lot as well. I'm sure that you did. Those of you that are watching, if you have anything to add to this conversation, definitely feel free to leave those thoughts in the comments below, maybe about why you choose to be cruelty-free, different steps you took to go cruelty-free, different brands you recommend, things like that. I think that would be helpful to the collective brain of makeup awesomeness so we can all learn from each other. So thank you again, Courtney, for being here. I appreciate you so much, and thank you so much for watching. If you're not already subscribed, please click the subscribe button down below. Definitely check out Courtney's channel, again linked in the video description, and mad love to you, and we will see you in videos very, very soon.